Our top focus, leopards caused a scare in two villages in Chandrapur in the state of Maharashtra. In the village of Leopard, a leopard entered a home and attacked a villager. It attacked another resident while people tried to corner it. No one has been seriously injured, fortunately, but one person has suffered minor injuries. The forest department has caught the leopard and is in the process of releasing it into the wild. In a separate incident, a leopard strayed into the village of Navargaon Upwan but died after it jumped into a well in an attempt to evade villagers. Shivarur now joins me from the studio to take you through those visuals that were caught on camera.
Some of the most dramatic images we've seen, Vedika, in the recent past of this particular attack. Another manifestation of just how humans and leopards cohabiting in this particular Chandrapur in Maharashtra has led to a very, very volatile situation. Once again, ample proof that nobody really knows what to do. And unlike the Meerut incident, Vedika, a few weeks ago, in which nobody knows what happened to that leopard, several people were injured. In this particular case, thankfully, at the end of this huge amount of drama in Chandrapur, this particular leopard, which appears to be a fully grown an adult of the species, was captured by the forest department, and we're told that it's in the process of actually being released into the wild. But if you can look at these pictures, the most dramatic part of it, it emerges from the roof, attacks a man who then falls over a wall. It's extremely frightened. Viewers must be told that in a situation like this, a leopard is nervous, it's frightened, it's extremely vulnerable and threatened, and that's why it's actually attacking these people, when all it wants to be doing at this point of time is actually trying to get away from the from all these humans crowding over it. As you can see, people are trying to corner it into a small alley. Several people, all these men, carrying big lathis, big sticks, trying to perhaps injure it in some way so they can capture it, subdue it in a way. But all they're really doing is aggravating it even more, making it more tense, more angry, more frightened, and therefore it's sort of lashing out. And that's that precise point where you saw the leopard attacking that man on the roof, was because it's really, really frightened for its life. In Meerut, we saw how, despite days and days of people actually hunting for that leopard, they actually couldn't find it, which all boils down to, even in this particular case, a real sense of just how standard operating procedures, for the treatment and handling of wildlife, especially in areas where, wild habitat and, an urban setting actually overlap, simply doesn't exist in India. We've had wildlife experts across the board, including people like Maneka Gandhi, Vedika, talk about, how standard operating procedures need to be filtered down. People need to be trained in how to actually treat these animals. Like, for example, a very simple, example in this particular case. If all of these people would stop running, they would stop, hunting for the leopard, it would probably just find its way out and escape back into the wild. But what you're seeing here is people crowding around the leopard, trying to hit it with sticks, frightening it, making it even more vulnerable than it already is, and actually escalating the situation. And that's precisely what's happened here.
Chief, I'm going to come back to you in a while. I believe Dr. Manilal, Director of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, is on the phone line with us. Dr. Manilal, what we're seeing on our screens is once again what's facing civilians in Maharashtra as well as animals, reigniting the animal versus human beings debate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are putting both the animals as well as people at risk, and this could have been easily avoided if we have a very strong plan to protect these highly vulnerable animals. And as you know, these leopards are protected under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and I think enough hasn't been done to help them, to save them, and also protect the people.
But what we're also seeing on our screens here, Doctor, is the fact that it seems that these people who are trying to rescue this leopard weren't trained enough. That's what these visuals seem to be telling us.
Yeah, I think the first and the foremost thing they should have done was to contact the wildlife department, who are responsible for rescuing the animal. I think we know that there are certain expertise required to rescue an animal, especially a wild animal, when they are displaced from the wild habitat. And apart from that, what is more important is to increase the awareness of the people, especially about dealing with such situations.
But aren't we putting the lives of many civilians at risk when we see visuals like this, Doctor, where these untrained personnel are trying to, rein in this leopard and then let him out in the wild? But in the process, a lot of lives at stake here. Do you hear of these cases very often?
Yeah, that's correct. But we have to look back and see what exactly caused the problem. I mean, the real issue here is, definitely now that we have a situation here, we have to deal with it, and the wildlife department is responsible for it. But if you look at the facts, I mean, what resulted in the situation is because the leopards, the wildlife is losing habitation because of the anti-poaching, because of they are losing their natural habitats, the deforestation. I mean, they end up in villages for food as well as for other reasons. So there is a need to prevent that part.
But should we be expecting forest department personnel to be trained for such things?
Yeah, absolutely. But the forest department also should be very well equipped. I mean, the staff should be skilled enough to deal with such situations, because these are not isolated cases, and it has been happening at different places for the last few weeks now.
All right, Dr. Manilal, thank you so much for joining us on the phone line. But let's take you back to Shivarur, who's standing by in the studio. Shiv, these are very dramatic visuals. They really talk about that man versus animal debate.
If you've noticed, Vedika, every single time we do a story about, leopards actually creeping into an urban setting, a settled area, we see pictures of these kind. They're extremely and frighteningly similar. Crowds of people trying to zero in on the leopard as they're doing in this particular area. And the frightened animal, simply trying to make a getaway. It doesn't want to be there at all. It wants to get away. But obviously, it is so frightened, so vulnerable and cornered by all these people, waving those sticks, that it obviously doesn't really have a chance. As you can see, all it's really trying to do here is find some kind of gap in this crowd of people, trying to corner it into some kind of place. And remember, the funny thing, or not really funny given the situation, is that none of these people, on your screen who are actually trying to hit that leopard have a plan. They have these sticks, they're waving them around. You've got a man trying to shut a door on a leopard and trap it into a small passage between two houses, but none of them really knows what to do. You can even see some policemen standing to the left-hand side with no real plan on what to do. There are actually documented ways and means of handling animals of this kind, and one of those suggests precisely the opposite of what is happening here, which is to, behave in an excited manner, try and trap the animal, make it feel threatened, make it, sort of lash out, which is when injuries of this kind really happen. So what you're seeing on the screen right now, very similar to what happened in Meerut a few weeks ago. And remember, Vedika, that story actually became like a global story. There were international news agencies that picked up that story because over a period of 24 days, nobody knew where that leopard is. And I might remind our viewers, they still don't know where that leopard is. Thankfully, this leopard has been captured by the forest department, and we're told that it's going to be released into the wild very shortly.
Shiv, do stay with me. I believe we have Mr. Fayaz, wildlife expert, also on the phone line with us. Mr. Fayaz, on our screens right now, we see a leopard who was trying to be rescued, but it's really strange how these untrained personnel were called in by the forest department to handle the situation, once again reigniting the human versus animal conflict.
Unfortunately, when you look at the scenario in the entire country, you don't talk about the trained staff, but the way there's a huge competition between human beings and animals going on, especially when you look at these predators. When people are encroaching towards their home, knowing the fact that these species are very generalist feeder, they can stay anywhere, even you have a small patch of forest where you find leopard, because leopard can sustain its life on even a small, prey base. But when you look at the training part, it is very sorry state of the department, because even though you have a trained staff, you have a very restricted and very small number of people who are trained, and they are part of one or two teams. They might not be available all the time. One thing I must tell you, that the situation is so worse that nobody knows the status of leopard today, and we are fighting for the tiger, but unfortunately one day will come when we'll lose our leopard.
Oh yes, absolutely, Mr. Fayaz, and we're talking about an attempt to coexist here, which is clearly failing in the state of Maharashtra.
I tell you, there is no example, no working functional model where you say that these predators and people can stay together. If they stay together, then why this sort of conflict is arising? Because knowing the human being, because if you are staying in a human-dominated landscape, it is very difficult for them to survive. Because the kind of pressure we exert, being a Homo sapiens sapien, any predator like leopard cannot sustain that pressure. And therefore, you have this sort of conflict.
And what we're also failing at out here is conflict management strategies. Clearly, we're seeing that on our visuals as we speak.
Yeah, you are very right, but I don't think simply blaming department would be enough. Knowing the fact, the way these animals are straying, especially when you talk about leopard, I told you that it is one of the generalist feeder. Even in the vicinity of Delhi, you see recently in a golf course you found leopard dead. So this is a species which can survive on even a small prey like rats. And what you call Indian hares. So even scavenge on many things. So therefore, it comes very close to the human beings, and this problem arises. And as far as training is concerned, you won't find so many people trained, because when forest is shrinking and these predators are increasing,
Yes.
they need to have more space for them.
My last question to you, Mr. Fayaz, before I let you go, is what we're seeing on our screens is this leopard attacking some human beings. But clearly the attack out here is the leopard's attempt at defense in a hostile environment.
Yes, desperately leopard would be, trying to, find out a passage to go out from here. And therefore, leopard is creating this sort of, situation. And I understand it requires a passage. And wherever I have seen once in Lakhimpur Kheri, when thousands of people are there, only two persons, me and one of the forest official, we went inside the bamboo group to handle leopard. But when thousands of people surrounding you and animal, it becomes very difficult to rescue the animal and try to find out a space for animal so that animal can go its
Yes,
own.
but also it's extremely important that villagers in places like Chandrapur village that we're seeing on our screens right now, these kind of people need to be trained, these kind of people need to be made aware of the situation so that they react in the right and proper way.
Yes, right. I agree with you that villagers should be trained so that they can handle these animals.
All right, Mr. Fayaz, thank you so much for joining us on the phone line. I believe Pankaj Khelkar is also on the phone line with us. Pankaj, what's the latest that you have? Has this leopard now been released into the wild?
As of now, the leopard has been tranquilized, and now the forest officials, once the leopard is fine, then they will be releasing it maybe in the Tadavan, there is tiger reserve. This Ballarka area, around 25 kilometers from Chandrapur, south of Chandrapur, is on the border of Andhra Pradesh, and such kind of incidents are happening over here because this area is surrounded by forest and humans are encroaching their land. And now the summer season, such kind of incidents are going to increase because such wild animals and come into the habitat, human habitat, and in search of water and food. So such kind of things, forest officials being trained, all these things should be geared up, and whatever you are seeing over here, like the leopard attacking and forest officers trying to tranquilize but unsuccessful, and at last after 4 to 5 hours of all such kind of things, the leopard was finally tranquilized. Now,
Pankaj, do stay with me on the phone line. I believe Mr. Dhotre, the warden of that area where this incident took place, is on the phone line with us. Mr. Dhotre, could you just tell us what happened and why there weren't enough of trained personnel to take care of the situation in the village of Chandrapur? Mr. Dhotre.
Hello.
Can you hear me, sir?
हाँ मैडम बोलिए.
सर, मैं पूछ रही थी कि चंद्रपुर विलेज में आज क्या हुआ था, क्योंकि ये जो लेपर्ड है हम अपने स्क्रीन्स पे देख रहे हैं, उसके विलेज के अंदर आने के बाद वहाँ पे बहुत क्योस दिख रहा था.
ये चंद्रपुर शहर को लगा हुआ बल्लारपुर सिटी है
जी.
ये बल्लारपुर सिटी के अंदर आज तड़के सुबह तेंदुआ घुस आया था
जी.
और जानवरों का जो झमेला होता था उसके अंदर वो आके था.
जी.
हाँ, तो उसको जानकारी मिलती हमारे रैपिड रिस्पांस यूनिट और हमारे वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन फोर्स के लोग, हम सब लोग वहाँ पहुँचे
जी.
और उसको रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन सर चला.
लेकिन हमारे टेलीविजन सेट पे जो हम अभी ये विजुअल्स दिखा रहे हैं ऑफ द लेपर्ड, सर, ये लग रहा है कि ये जो लोग गए थे उसको रेस्क्यू करने के लिए वो ट्रेन पर्सनल नहीं थे.
नहीं मैडम, एक्चुअल क्या होता है कि हम रेगुलर यहाँ पे जो ऑपरेशन करते हैं, रेगुलर ही रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन चलता है. जो हम छत के ऊपर है वहाँ से एक्सपर्ट ट्रैंकुलाइजर यूनिट के जो शूटर थे वो ट्रैंकुलाइज कर रहे थे. छत के ऊपर से ट्रैंकुलाइज की कोशिश जारी थी, लेकिन उसी समय नीचे से उसने जंप कर दिया था.
All right, Mr. Dhotre, thank you so much for joining us. He is the warden of the area where this incident took place. All right, those are visuals that really go on to highlight the man versus animal conflict that we've been discussing for the last 10 minutes on our channel.